Hello and welcome back to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Harlock, and today our epic road trip continues. This is the South Dakota episode. First, we'll check in with Jeremy Briggs in Rapid City, where he's building what might be the world's first recording studio and music venue made from hempcrete. Then we'll head out to eastern South Dakota and talk to Derrick Dohmann from Horizon Hemp Seeds. But first, a quick shout out to all of our sponsors who have helped to make this national hemp tour possible. I&D Hemp, New Holland Agriculture, the National Hemp Association, DeSmet Rose Downs, Amerishon Cast Hemp, Pterodon Hemp, King's Agri Seeds, Victory Hemp Foods, Bish Enterprises, and Hemp Harvest Works. Thank you for your support. Okay, so on the last episode, I recapped the event in Fort Benton that was hosted by I&D Hemp. After Montana, we drove down through Yellowstone National Park. We saw some hot springs, some waterfalls, a couple of bison, and lots of slow-driving humans. Then we drove across Wyoming. I really enjoyed the Shoshone Valley. Eventually, we got to the Black Hills of South Dakota. We saw Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse, and then we went up to Rapid City, where I caught up with Jeremy Briggs. Jeremy Briggs, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
Good, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me, first give me an introduction and then tell me where we are.
We are in Abby's Feed and Seed Complex, which is an old granary, and we are in what we call the Corner Building. It's 406 5th Street, Rapid City, South Dakota, downtown, Black Hills. And we are in one of the sound band rehearsal spaces that we recently built out of hempcrete.
Okay, and looking around, just all the walls are cast hempcrete.
Yeah.
And
you put it up a form and then you pour it in. It dries almost instantly, and once you get it all to the same level, you raise the form up. You can kind of see the lines where maybe the form's been moved.
Mm-hmm. And you're working with Cameron McIntosh from Amerishon Cast Hemp back in Pennsylvania?
Correct.
Yeah, so he's one of the sponsors of our tour, Amerishon.
Yes,
so,
very good. Yeah, he's a good guy. He came out and we got her done in 4 days. Him and a guy named Matt out of North Dakota.
Okay.
I have to get his last name and information, but
that's okay. But this is not your first hempcrete project, is it?
No. Actually, I put together, I guess, what was to be considered North America's first successful hempcrete build back in 2008.
2008?
Yeah.
Okay, where was that?
I was down on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in a place called Kiza Park, which is like 5 miles north of Manderson, South Dakota.
Okay.
About 80 miles from here.
Okay. And how did that project come together?
Well, let's see. Alex Whiteplume, who was the first farmer to cultivate and sell a hemp crop in the United States since the Controlled Substance Act, got an injunction placed on him, and he couldn't grow his hemp anymore, but we were still trying to show the value of hemp. And his house burned down in 2008. And a lot of people chipped in money and time, and we rebuilt his house, but we wanted to rebuild it out of hempcrete, but we didn't have time because it was the middle of winter. So we put together a hempcrete project, which was funded by the Hemp Hoedown in 2008. And then a group of probably 30 volunteers, we all went down there. We bought the hemp and lime from American Lime Tech out of Chicago. That was a subsidiary of Lime Tech in England. And we got that built in about 4 days. It was a community center, so we took off the plywood exterior, and then we framed in the hemp and we made it a foot thick. And it still is a remarkable structure because it only has a couple windows and a couple doors. And I've been in there before with no air conditioning, 100-degree heat outside, and it maintained 70 degrees all day.
Wow.
So it's very efficient. It's still in use now. It's part of a community center at a school that they have down there. And yeah, okay. Always been interested in the product, and now that it's more available and there's more people doing it, we wanted to show some of its other uses.
Right. Have you been involved in other hempcrete building projects since then, or is this the next one you've done?
This is the next one I've overseen. I've kept an eye on things that happen around the world, but...
Okay. Are you a builder by trade, or where are you coming from background-wise?
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a hemp activist. I was the spokesman for the 2002 South Dakota Industrial Hemp Initiative. I sell different kinds of hemp t-shirts and different products, throw festivals. I've done petition gathering. So I've been a hemp activist for about 20 years.
Okay. How do you see the state of the industry now? Like, what progress have we made?
Now that the
and where are we
CBD
going?
sort of boom is come and gone, I think the other cannabinoids will have their little booms, but it's time to get back to the industrial hemp part, the fiber, the food, and start to develop those industries. I still work with Alex Whiteplume to try to bring industrial hemp farming to the res. We did a little bit of CBD farming, and we did okay, but we're trying to put together a grant package that includes different kinds of processing so that we can make our own herds for hempcrete, for example, and make seeds for food and so on and so forth. But it's an economically challenged area, so it would really help change people's lives if we could get a thriving hemp industry down there.
Yeah,
There's not a lot of infrastructure, so we've got to do what we got to do.
That's the issue all over, is that there's no infrastructure. It's slowly being built. How do people react to the hempcrete projects that you've worked on?
Oh, I think it's really exciting, really neat. They'd like to do it themselves. They want the price to come down a little bit, but the thing about the price too is you save a lot of money on your energy costs, because the material, it has what's called a phase changing property, where it actually captures the energy that's created when water changes phases. So when water goes from a liquid to a gas, or from a liquid to a solid, or vice versa, it captures that energy and it redistributes it to help regulate the internal core temperature of the home. It's kind of a little miracle worker that way. So the way it bonds with lime, it allows air and moisture to pass through. And a lot of building materials, the moisture gets trapped in there, and then you have problems, and it's bad for your health. Hempcrete also regulates the humidity to a perfect percentage for humans, which most building materials keep it a little high. So it's a healthier material. And then a lot of other building materials too, they leach different chemicals. So the entire time that they're settling or setting, there's all these chemicals that are being brought into the internal space that could potentially make people sick.
Like formaldehyde and things like that, off-gassing from plastics,
Sure.
and mold from
Vinyl.
all that stuff.
So this is just water, lime from America. When we did the 2008 project, there wasn't hydrated lime mining in America. So that's really exciting. So both of these products could be grown around here, or at least in the United States, which is quite exciting.
Cool. So do you have other hemp projects sort of on the horizon now?
We're going to build the first hempcrete walk-in cooler. We're going to use some of the hempcrete over in that first room as the back of it. It's going to be about 8 by 10. And that's where we'll keep the kegs, and then we'll eventually, after it dries, put a finish on it and burnish the inside so it's smooth. The requirements here in Rapid City are it has to be able to be below 40 degrees. It has to be able to be clean. It has to be a smooth surface. So by burnishing it, it's kind of like rubbing it until it's smooth. Like if you know anything about ceramics, it's kind of what you do too.
Okay. Cool. That's exciting. What other challenges does the hemp industry face here in South Dakota?
Oh, probably the governor not being on board right away. There was an initiative that was for recreational marijuana, and it got over 50% of the vote, but attached to it was also the industrial hemp part of it, because she was so reluctant to go along with the rest of the country and starting the hemp industry, which would greatly benefit our farmers. And so, as we've always been, as an activist, we've always said hemp and marijuana are different, right? And said, well, that's why hemp can't be legal, because it's too close to marijuana. Has always been the argument. So now they're using that same argument to make it illegal, because they say that you can't amend the Constitution in that way if it deals with more than one thing. And the argument is it's just cannabis, but the governor is saying, no, it's hemp and marijuana, which are two different things now, when it's convenient for the powers that be to say that. And so it's in the South Dakota Supreme Court. It's been there for a few months. They haven't ruled on it yet. And when they do, I expect it'll go to the United States Supreme Court for a final ruling. But these issues that she's bringing up should have been vetted before it went on through the ballot. That's what you do. If you have a problem with it, you make sure that the language and the results of the vote are in accordance with state law, and that's what the Attorney General does. So it's strange that after the fact they would then sue to, so unfortunately hemp got caught up in all that. So we still have to wait and see until these rulings, even though hemp is, not a recreational thing, it's an industrial thing that can make walls and food and plastics and, paper and fiber and
it's
energy.
It's like we're on the edge of a paradigm shift, and then there are these people like Governor Noem who are just in the way, I guess. If a different governor were in place, would it be easier? Like, is it really just
I
her?
hope so. I wouldn't know.
Okay.
It's hard to know what the motivations are.
Right. When's her re-election?
I think soon.
Soon? Okay.
Would be probably next year.
Yeah. All right.
But it might be this year.
But you obviously have support from people and, the constituents, right?
Yeah, I guess. It took the people to vote all these things in.
Yeah.
We also passed the medical marijuana initiative with over 70%. They actually a higher percentage of votes than Noem did in her last re-election.
Cool.
So it seems like politically you want to be on the side of cannabis because it keeps winning all the elections, and people seem to want it as a safer alternative to the things we currently have. So yeah, it's something that's coming. It's a good thing, and anybody who stands in the way probably has some bad ulterior motives. They probably want to try to control it.
Right. How are things looking from like a grain perspective out here? Do you have farmers interested in growing hemp for grain?
I'm sure there are, but it's been illegal on a state level, so people are chomping at the bit.
Right. All right. Is there anything else you want to share with our listening audience? Anything people should know about South Dakota or Rapid City, or the work you're doing?
I think we covered it all. I guess.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having us out here today on
Appreciate
the
it.
Lancaster Farming National Hemp Tour.
All right. Keep it up.
Industrial hemp.
From Rapid City, we continued our journey east across South Dakota. We stopped in at Wall Drug, and then we camped for the night in Mitchell. And then this morning, we drove up to De Smet, South Dakota, to check out the Laurel Ingalls Wilder Homestead. Now, I've read those books to my kids, I think, 4 times now, the whole series. So we know them very well, and we were excited to, see that place firsthand. It's a little underwhelming, but still beautiful country up there. We didn't pay the $15 a person to take the tour to do all the recreation stuff. But, it was good to be there. Luckily, there was some hemp growing nearby. Derrick Dohmann, I first met him in Kansas back in July at the South Bend Industrial Hemp Open House. And when I told him we were going to be in De Smet, he said, "Oh, you got to come up and see the hemp. We've got some growing right there." And then I also saw him at the Shindig in Fort Benton last week. So it was great to catch up with him, and here's my interview that I conducted with him in the hemp field today. Derrick, welcome to the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. How are you doing?
Doing great, Eric. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty good. Hey, could you introduce yourself and then tell me where we are?
Yes. So Derrick Dohmann with Horizon Hemp Seeds out of Willow Lake, South Dakota. We're a certified industrial hemp seed company.
Okay, and then what do you have growing here?
We have a new variety to the U.S. It is called Vega, VEGA. Kind of like the crappy old Chevy car. It's tough to forget, but hopefully it performs better than that.
Yeah.
We essentially have a partnership with a Canadian seed company, and we are bringing some of their varieties into the United States and basically sole distribution for them in a certified territory. So our goal here with everything that our company grows is to grow these varieties in different states as a registered seed and certify that out through each state.
Okay.
So bottom line is what we're selling next year then to the farmers is a certified seed. So Just some of the criteria, it's below 0.3 THC, of course. It's 80% better germ. Just a few accolades that you're looking for. Your male counts in the fields will be compliant with what the breeder paperwork says. So basically, bottom line, your farmer or grower knows they're getting a reliable seed that they can put in the ground.
All right. Tell me about like planting density and row spacing.
Sure. So this field here was planted at about 25 pounds per acre, and we were in 10-inch rows. Now, in the past, this is our third year growing. We've grown in North Dakota, Minnesota, and now South Dakota. We've played around with densities and spacing as well. We've gone as much as 30 pounds in an acre, as low as 15. Obviously, the lower the density, the bigger stalks you get. So with some of those companies like IND coming online, that's probably not what they're really looking for. But with this variety, we can dual crop it. So we are going to clip the tops off, and then we are going to bale up the straw that's left over. And we are going to send it out to IND and have them try it out just to see how they like it. Even though it's not supposed to be a dual variety, it's supposed to be for grain only. Obviously, when we're not growing it in Canada, different things can happen. So
yeah, it looks kind of tall.
It's very tall. I'm 6'5", and as you can see, most of this stuff is over my head or dead even with me. Yeah. So again, it was only supposed to get 50 to 60 inches tall. So anything can happen in the hemp world. So it's fun to learn.
Right. Were you in agriculture before you got into hemp?
Believe it or not, I was not.
Okay.
I was in the financial world, had nothing to do with farming, never grew up on a farm. So I guess that's one thing that's kind of fun to say about the hemp world is, anybody that might not have a background in farming or grew up on a second, third, fourth generation family farm can get into this crop because it's so new.
It's the gateway crop. It gets you into farming.
There you go. Yeah. Exactly. Self-story on that. A gentleman in our company, he's been farming for many, many years. I think he farms around 8,000 acres here down by Willow Lake. So he's our real farming expertise if we do have any real specific questions that I might not know the answer to. But basically what I've learned in the last 2 years, going on 3 now, I'm just trying to apply that and make different tweaks here and there and share my experiences with other farmers. I mean, that's how we all learn, is combine our efforts and our knowledge. And what might work best for me might not work for the guys in Montana or Wisconsin or Iowa.
Right.
So we're all trying to spearhead this thing together and put our efforts in the same direction, so to speak.
Yeah. How is it working with your Department of Ag here in South Dakota?
It's actually working really well. Right away, it was a little shaky just because I would blame it on education. There just wasn't enough of it, and it wasn't being spread around in our capital enough. Once we got through that barrier and really explained what we're trying to do here, I mean, you hear hemp seed or hemp and everyone immediately thinks CBD. So, CBD is a great crop, but we're really trying to push the industrial side of things with grain and fiber and make this a true rotational crop for our farmers. Good. I mean, everything around us here is corn and soybeans for the most part. We might have a little wheat here and there, but, it'd be a great option for them to rotate in. And I think once we started getting a little spark with the Department of Ag on, okay, I see what these guys are doing, they really jumped on board, and they've been a huge help with all the farmers across South Dakota that grew this year.
Good.
With that being said, I say all the farmers now, I think we had about 18 applications and about 2,500 acres across the state. So it's not a lot, but
you got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere, and you got to get it off the ground. So, unfortunately, this year we've been extremely dry, and we've had just crazy temperatures, especially early on when we planted this stuff. I mean, it came up quick because we had adequate moisture in the ground, but once that got used up, I mean, it stunted off at about 6 to 8 inches. And as you know, you need canopy to control weeds. So, it is dirty in the headlands and edge of the field, but once you get in, it's it looks pretty darn good considering all those factors.
Right,
But
right.
bottom line, it's a great learning year for everyone because it shows what can happen if we don't get perfect timely rains. It's just another end of the spectrum to consider. So it's a good learning experience at the same time.
Good. How about the testing protocol with the state? What's that like?
Sure. So that's pretty much off of USDA spec testing. I mean, they're going to come out and clip off the top 6 to 8 inches of our field, random spots all around the whole field. This is 140 acres here. And then they're going to send that into a third-party lab. I believe ours is going to be in Kentucky this year. So we should have results back, I would imagine, within 3 to 5 days.
I'll let this guy go past.
Yeah.
And then,
That's one of the hired men, actually, for our...
okay.
He actually planted this.
Yes. Do you find that the testing is kind of, I don't want to say ridiculous, but there's no THC in any of the grain that you're producing here?
I do. I don't want to say it's not necessary because, of course, we need to be compliant on what our state program says. So we do have to get tested. But, for a grain and fiber variety, for the most part, your plants aren't coming anywhere close to that 0.3%. And the bottom line is none of these are being used for anything that would test higher than 0.3. So, for example, let's say we have a fiber field that tests at, 1.5%. Well, it's being baled up as straw. It's not being used for any oil, or the buds aren't being taken off for any of that. So, I really like what Montana is trying to get done, where they're doing a tier system, where once the variety does get proven and tested okay, it goes on a tier A list and it doesn't need to be tested anymore.
Right.
So, with my efforts with the South Dakota Industrial Hemp Association, I'm sit as vice president on that board. We've been working really closely with a couple of lobbyists out in our state capital, and that's one of the things we're going to go after this next year.
Okay. When are you going to harvest, and what are you going to do for harvest?
Sure. So this was planted the 26th of May this year. Typically it's about 110 day maturity on this variety. So we're looking to harvest here within the next probably 3 to 4 weeks at the most. We're just going to be using a John Deere combine with a 40-foot draper head on it. And I mean, as you can see where the seed is setting on these, I mean, we have seed that's down to about half of the plant. So we're going to be cutting off a fair amount of extra material running through that. But in past years, last year, for example, some of our fields were 10 to 12 foot tall. So they make this stuff look short. And that had no problem running through a combine. Of course, you might have an issue here and there, but if you take your time and aren't in a rush, which you can't be with this crop, especially never doing it before, you just take your time. And if you have any little issues, it's okay to stop and check everything out. So it'll be interesting.
And then what will you do with the straw?
Sure. So we'll swath that down, and we will bale that up. And I think we're going to bale it up into large squares. And we will be sending that out to Ken at I&D.
I&D. Okay.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about your company, Horizon Hemp Seeds?
Absolutely. So this is our 3rd year in business. As I stated before, we pride ourselves on only carrying certified varieties. Now, whether that's something we've produced or another variety like X59, as long as it's certified, we will sell it. And, that's one of the things we're working with companies like I&D to find out, is having large test plots around different areas of the U.S. to figure out where these things perform at. Because, hey, it might grow great in South Dakota, but it might be horrible in Montana. So one of the things we're pushing for is more of that education and performance side of things. Again, 3 years in the business, just a small family operation. There's only 5 partners in the company, and I am the sole employee. So very, very small, but partnered with this Canadian seed company to introduce these varieties into the U.S. And see how they perform down here, and hopefully we can find some spots around here that they do well in.
Okay. And people can learn more at horizonhempseeds.com.
Correct. That is correct.
All right. Cool. Well, Derrick, thanks for your time today. It's great to check this field out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming, Eric. I appreciate it.
Yep. So tonight, as I'm recording this, I am in Lincoln, Nebraska. Tomorrow morning, bright and early, I'll head over to the University of Nebraska here and talk to the folks about the work they're doing with grain hemp and oil pressing. So stay tuned for that. After Nebraska, we're just going to hightail it home. We're going back to Pennsylvania. It's going to take us something like 14 to 16 hours to get home from here. But we do have one final stop on the way, and that's in western Pennsylvania, in Newcastle, where the Project PA Hemp Home is, and that's where they're making a hempcrete house there. So stay tuned for that. Should be good. You've heard about that project here on the podcast. I interviewed the folks from Don Services a few months ago, and also Cameron McIntosh from Amerishon Cast Hemp. He is heavily involved in that project too. So I'm super excited to see it. And then from Newcastle, we'll just head straight across Pennsylvania on the Pennsylvania Turnpike to our home sweet home. And we are all looking forward to being back. This trip has been amazing, but also very challenging. Eventually, my kids will forgive me for ruining their summer by dragging them all over the country to see amazing things and meet inspiring people. At least, I hope they will. Anyway, that's the show for this week. Thank you for listening. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out at lancasterfarming.com and be sure to sign up for our hemp newsletter while you're there. Okay, until next time, I will see you on the road. This episode of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2021 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited and produced by Eric Herlock, and any music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird Shadow.